Thank you. Good morning. My name is Alison Lloyd. I'd like to welcome you to the 15th George Briscoe Kerferd Oration. Community gatherings have been held on this land for many generations. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect their strength, resilience, and capacity. I pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We are here today to reflect on the relationship between business and community, and I feel utterly privileged to introduce this conversation. By gathering as a community in discussion, we can come to an understanding of what social responsibility we expect of businesses in the Indigo Shire. Together we can identify the role that each of us play in building positive relationships between business and the community. Today, our distinguished orator, Barry Irvin, will contribute insights from his vast experience to the conversation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, especially, to those who have contributed to the Kerferd Oration and got us to the point we are today. To our orator, Barry Irvin, member of the Order of Australia. To the past orators we have here in the room with us today, Cathy McGower, Officer of the Order of Australia and Federal Member for Indi. Bill Wilson, recipient of the Australian Police Medal and the Medal of the Order of Australia. To the representatives of our sponsors, Natalie McDonald from La Trobe University, Michael Mack from WAW Credit Union, Loretta Carroll, Chair of the Into Our Hands Community Foundation, our Mayor, Jenny O'Connor, from Beechworth Secondary College, Principal Patricia Broome, and school captains Dane Asplet and Holly Borshman. Our sincere thanks also to the descendants of George Briscoe Kerferd present with us today. Apologies have been received from a number of leaders across our region. Now to our oration. Barry Irvin has extensive experience in the dairy industry and has been chairman of Bega Cheese since the year 2000. Barry's leadership has seen Bega Cheese grow from a small regional dairy to now one of the largest dairy companies in the world, supplying a product range which is enjoyed in Australia and exported internationally. Barry's work as a CEO and farmer himself provides a comprehensive understanding of the issues faced by Australian farmers, the key investments required to meet changing consumer needs, and the management of long-term customer and community relationships. More than this, Barry is committed to social responsibility in business and seeks to embed this ideal into all organisations in which he is involved. Since 2002, Barry has been chairman of Giant Steps, an organisation that provides services to children on the autism spectrum. In 2008, Barry was made a member of the Order of Australia for his contributions both to children with disability and to the dairy industry. Recognition in the business field so far includes NAB Monash University Agribusiness Leader of the Year in 2009 and Rabobank Agribusiness Leader of the Year 2011. Please welcome our distinguished orator, Barry Irvin AM, to deliver the 15th George Briscoe Kerferd Oration.
It's always helpful if you have your speech. Hi everyone. A young boy runs from the house to the dairy. He's not in a hurry. He just runs everywhere he goes. It is a late winter's afternoon. A bit of a chill in the air. The boy has bare feet. He has one pair of shoes but they're only for good. He doesn't think about it. The soles of his feet are as tough as leather. The gravel road makes no impression. A few years later, that same young boy is in high school. It's a tough time. He doesn't really belong. Academically, he performs well. Socially, he doesn't fit. Neither the farm kids nor the town kids accept him. Or maybe he's just different. The bullies do their thing. Escape routes are planned in the hours of loneliness. Music is a sanctuary as the Sultans of Swing ring out from the $28 second-hand turntable in his room as he studies maths and dreams of the city. The young boy and his sister wish people wouldn't stare at their disabled sister. They feel embarrassed, but Mum and Dad always said she should be included and always did their best to make sure she was. But this was the late 60s and early 70s. Disabled people were in institutions. It was for their own good and meant that people weren't offended. Not the boy's mum. She had said no way. So people stared and he felt embarrassed and a little ashamed of himself that he was embarrassed of his sister. Escape is hard. Large organisations such as banks or government agencies can offer a way to break the shackles. The bank will be the escape to the city. 9 to 5, weekends off, lots of pretty girls. Feel guilty about leaving Dad with little help on the farm. Return every second weekend to help. Escape is short-lived. The young man's dad dies. He returns to something he never wanted. His mum needs his help. His sister needs his help. It's financially very difficult. He feels again like he has no shoes, but his feet are soft now. Not sure where to turn, good men and women quietly come to hold his and his new bride's hand. Quiet advice, quiet help, quiet invitations into the community. An example of what good people do. The young man wasn't a natural farmer. He did still want to run everywhere, at least in his mind. Impatience, the dream of better, was formed in his mind by all he had seen and experienced. He had by now had the benefit of people telling him that it was okay to expect to achieve, and that there was no reason why he couldn't. When he was afraid, he had people quietly reassure and help him. When he was embarrassed by difference, he realised it was a weakness in him, a lack of bravery to defend against wrong and fight for what is right. What forms us is different for each of us. Our guiding principles come from the influences and experiences of our lives. Of course, that young boy stands before you today feeling great responsibility to make sure, at this moment, I live up to the honour of delivering the Kerferd Address. In the moments when I leave here, my mind will turn to the responsibilities of leading a billion-dollar food company and not letting down those who have put their faith in me and in Bega Cheese, the 500 dairy farmer suppliers, the 8,000 shareholders, the 2,000 staff, our customers around the world, the communities that we operate in. But it's not my only important job. At Giant Steps, I must try and live up to the promise we make to those children and young adults with autism and their families that rely on us. The promise I make to the 130 staff that work so diligently and passionately at Giant Steps, Sydney and Melbourne. I need them to know that every day we are building an organisation that sets an example for others to follow, that is inclusive and innovative, that truly makes a difference. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you for inviting me here today to deliver this address, which I have in fact entitled, All Movement is Risk. And I hope it will provide my perspective on corporate social responsibility. It may or may not surprise you that the title is actually a line that Bega Cheese's corporate lawyer quoted to me when we were working late at night on yet another project to build and make Bega Cheese even stronger. I was tired, but the line amused me, as I could not imagine thinking like that. Of course, my lawyer, who was also a good friend, was just trying to slow me down, give me sound advice as to how much change or risk or work one person or one organisation could handle. He was tired, I was tired, and my mind went back to when I was a young boy running with bare feet and how far life had taken me, how far movement had taken me. As I sat in a high-rise corporate office talking in multiples of hundreds of millions of dollars and playing the corporate game of strategy. All those months ago, all movement is risked seemed to be the right title for this oration, even though it is such a wrong statement. It did amuse me at the time. It can refer to so many things, literally from getting out of bed each morning, indeed, even activities in bed. It can be crossing the road, going for a walk, driving a car, making a business decision. It is really talking about change being risk. As I reflect on the thought, change is risk, all I can really think is change is wonderful. Change has created a wonderful opportunity for that barefoot boy, created a wonderful company in Bega Cheese and a wonderful organisation in Giant Steps. I prefer to think of the risk in change being the risk of losing your way, losing the guiding principles that formed you, forgetting what good men and women do, not thinking to help, to support, to encourage. I'm so proud of the values of Bega Cheese and Giant Steps, and so proud to have had the opportunity to contribute to the success of the organisations. But my ambition goes beyond growth and making a difference in those organisations. My ambition is forged by those that set examples for me to follow, those that embraced me, embraced change, celebrated achievement, both theirs and others. My ambition is to try and live up to those that showed me the way and hopefully make a contribution to the example others will maybe follow in the future. There is, of course, risk in change. I should say from the outset that I prefer in my personal and business life to use the word fragility rather than risk. I'm not a fan of the word risk in life or in business. Risk implies something to be avoided, something to move away from. I prefer fragility. Something that is fragile is often precious, something to move towards, to nurture, embrace and take care of. We need to take risk in life and in business, and in fact I think Australia has become too risk averse. I wonder if our thinking would change if we replaced risk registers in business with fragility registers. I wonder if we talked about climate fragility instead of climate risk, if we thought of our place on this earth and the things that we do as fragile. Perhaps most importantly, if we think of communities and our values as fragile, do we care for them more? Do we think about them more? Do we protect them more? Ladies and gentlemen, I have been fortunate enough to lead and be part of growing two wonderful organisations which started from very humble beginnings and have increased in size by very large multiples. When I reflect on how this was achieved and how two very different organisations could grow at similar speeds while being led by the same person, I do reflect on how I think, the support I have had and the communities that I have been a member of. I perhaps should start with something very simple, my personal approach to life, which I think sometimes is considered by others to be a little strange or even baffling. I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but by my late 20s, I stopped being embarrassed by most things. I had observed enough of how teams and communities work. I had recognised the strengths of the collective, seen the power of the individual, and come to believe that success would always require an openness to change, as the world was always changing. Growing up in a small town, I had seen the way teams work and communities work, taking the farm equipment to refurbish the local footy oval, helping out a neighbour, the local cricket team cobbling together enough players to get a team on the field each week, but then going on to win the comp. People gathering to pay their respects at a funeral. The lives and circumstances of others always being important. As I began to work for large organisations and saw how teams worked in business and how culture, strategy and the support of one another was so vital to success, how small, effective, passionate teams could achieve so much, but also relied on strong leadership to retain focus and clear goals, my approach to leadership began to form. The approach that these learnings built in me is one message that I often speak of. I believe that in Australia, in our communities of families, friends, businesses and work colleagues, we must be better at sharing our dreams and sharing our fears. Personally, I have bored anyone that would listen. At my local pub, at work, on a plane, on a train, standing in a line, with my dreams. I've also told them about my fears. Perhaps this is the beginning of my explanation and particular take on the values and corporate social responsibility. Dreams and fears. Imagine that you are a very young chairman. Your industry is about to deregulate. You are running a cooperative and your farmer members' incomes are about to almost halve. It is in the year 2000, that was me. Bega Cheese had 1% of Australia's milk, located literally in the middle of nowhere. Almost 70% of the milk we handled was going into the New South Wales regulated system. I think we produced around 3,000 tonnes of cheese then. At the time that I joined Bega Cheese, it had 80 staff, produced around that 3,000 tonnes of cheese. And indeed, there wasn't much question that as we headed towards 2000, the year 2000, we were on most people's list of a company likely to disappear as deregulation hit. It is therefore interesting to occasionally reflect that this year we'll produce about 250,000 tonnes of product, employ over 2,000 people and export around the world. Dreams and fears, ladies and gentlemen. I wandered the streets in the lead up to the year 2000, talking to my bankers, my business network, of course my own board and management, even my competitors, telling anybody who would listen about what I dreamed of and what I thought I might be able to create at Bega Cheese. I also told them what I feared would stop me. You can imagine my competitors thought that I was crazy when I would tell them the fears that I had for Bega Cheese and indeed even the weaknesses that I saw in the business. They also, I think, thought I was pretty crazy when I was telling them about my dreams. The thing that I have learnt about human nature is that in the vast majority of people, there is an overwhelming wish to help, and sometimes they just need to be asked. The funny thing about human nature is that when someone gives you a problem, even if they are a competitor or someone that you don't even like very much, you can't help but to think about a solution. Worse or better, depending on your perspective, the next time you see the person that shared their dream or fear with you, you will more than likely offer your particular version of a solution. And so it was that the early models and solutions were formed by many in the Bega Cheese network, by our competitors, by our friends, in our offices, in other people's offices, at local footy grounds, at the pub. Of course, these early models worked. They worked because they had the benefit of the wisdom of the collective. Dreams and fears. Imagine a beautiful little boy born to parents who loved him, who had become quite successful and could offer many opportunities in the boy's life. My little boy, Matty, he was beautiful. He's beautiful. Blonde hair, bright blue eyes. He developed normally for the first 2 years of his life, began to speak, played with his brother and sister. Autism arrived in ours and Matty's life like a hurricane when he was 3. In around a year, Matty had lost all his words, would self-injure in heartbreaking ways, couldn't be touched. He did not want to leave the house or have anyone come to it. We put a gate halfway up the driveway and locked it to keep people away. The distress of a child humming, rocking, injuring himself, being almost permanently distressed and anxious, not able to sleep, not able to be comforted, was enormous. Specialists would look at us with pity, but no solution. Some did suggest he be surrendered, that he wouldn't really know and an institution may be better. I am my mother's son. No, was the answer from both myself and my wife. Back to the bar stools, the footy grounds, the corporate offices, the planes, the trains. Tell everyone your dreams and fears. Tell them what you hope for. Tell them what you fear for. Tell them about Matty. Get the collective thinking going. Get them thinking about it. Someone's heard of a small group of people trying to do something different with autism. They had a derelict building and 6 staff at Giant Steps in Sydney, and it called themselves Giant Steps. A place for Matty to be given a chance. A place for him to go to school when everybody had said there was no school for him. A wonderful place, a place that incorporates the ideas of inclusion, of individual programs, of integrated education and therapy, of research, of training, of learning from others. This is the place for Matty, but it's a tiny community. We already know the value of community, so we begin to create a culture that includes asking for help, each of us doing what we can. No fees, so children from all walks of life can be helped. We create a family, a community. Every year we grow. Every year we have to ask for more help. Every year I meet desperate but relieved mums and dads who tell me their stories. Every year I tell them we are here for them. We will help. We will be helped. They are part of a community now. Nothing will surprise. We have all been through a lot. Every year, Giant Steps will get stronger. More children ultimately move to a new city in Melbourne. Dreams realised. There are of course still fears, but Giant Steps and indeed Bega Cheese have grown beyond me. They can carry on without me. The strategies and values are owned and shared by many. They are communities within themselves and are able to help others. It has taken me a long time, but let me get to the corporate social responsibility and its importance. The purpose of my stories to this point has been to try and demonstrate the foundations of the values of the organisations I lead, and to perhaps give light on what I think is a mistake when people talk about corporate social responsibility. My point is that corporate social responsibility will never be in the right balance if people and leaders think in terms of it being a duty or something to put on their to-do list. It has to be who you are, what you stand for, what values you build in the company. If, as it is the case at Bega Cheese, your values include supporting one another, if your values include thinking about customers and valuing suppliers, being agile and taking ownership, if at your core you believe in working together, corporate social responsibility will not only come naturally, it will be pervasive throughout your organisation and reinforce your values, making your business stronger and your strategy clearer. At Bega Cheese, you can see how that manifests itself in the regions we operate in. Not only does Bega Cheese endeavour to support organisations through financial contributions, it also runs major fundraising events such as the Tatura 200 and the Bega Cheese corporate event. Each of these events are organised by our staff with the support of the company, and our customers, suppliers and corporate colleagues are all asked to contribute to the fundraising efforts. Each event not only raises much needed funds for local charities, it bonds staff, customers, suppliers together with the community as they organise, participate and contribute to events. Being part of an organisation that tries to make a big difference, that believes in its value and invests in it every day, drives extraordinary value. It is well documented that last year the two largest dairy companies in Australia, very late in the year, elected to significantly reduce their price to farmers. The impact was devastating and disproportionately on one particular part of the industry, being dairy farmers. Bega Cheese, of course, did not follow their lead. It was against our values and what we stood for. Not only did we not do so, I somewhat controversially spoke out against the actions of my corporate colleagues. As you can imagine, my colleagues didn't appreciate my commentary on their actions, which was, in its simplest form, to simply say, I believed what they did was wrong. It was difficult to publicly speak out against the actions of competitors. It is not my style. I much prefer to talk positively about what Bega does, but I could not ignore the fact that many of my suppliers and staff were looking for me to stand up and voice the values that are so much part of who Bega Cheese is. The decision to not follow our competitors with a price drop to our dairy farmers was one that involved tens of millions of dollars for our company. Interestingly, that decision was one that required no deliberation at board or senior executive level, and was supported not only by our staff and our farmers, but also by our institutional investors. No one was surprised we made the decision. It was part of who we are. No one was surprised that I took a stance. It was part of who I am. This year, of course, has been a busy corporate year, as we've made a major $460 million acquisition, and despite the fact that it includes a lot of things, seems to have been distilled down to Bega Cheese's bought Vegemite. I should say bought Vegemite back home, which seems to be the... We've also executed a $200 million infant formula transaction with global infant formula giant Mead Johnson, and raised $120 million through an institutional placement, and are in the process of raising more through a share purchase plan. As I stand before you today, I can report that Bega Cheese has a significant list of dairy farmers that want to join our company. Our share placement was oversubscribed by hundreds of millions of dollars, with it only taking a matter of hours before we knew we had a rather strange problem of having to refuse people's money. When I talk to Bega Cheese teams about building a great Australian food company, I talk to them about our current circumstances being the result of years of work, of years of building reputation. The values shown over the years, the social responsibility and lead we look to take, has yielded the company as much as it has yielded the community. Many of our corporate deals begin with relationships and reputation. Farmers want to supply us. Shareholders want to invest in us. Like-minded companies want to work with us. The question of corporate social responsibility and its importance and contribution is maybe best framed another way. When I'm asked what role corporate social responsibility plays in your strategy, I can safely say that the question in the case of Bega Cheese is easily answered. And I would observe that it is also the case for many of the organisations that I deal with, whether on behalf of Bega Cheese or Giant Steps. Corporate social responsibility is reflected in our values. It is therefore part of our thinking and all that we do. And while some would say values are an important part of business, I would say values are our business. Values are our strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, as I think about our communities, as I think about the future, I do think about the megatrends that will inevitably affect us all. Globalisation, demographic change, individualisation, environmental change, digitisation, technology convergence. I do know they mean we have to be agile, we have to embrace change, we have to be resilient. We have to recognise that much that we do is fragile. It is in that recognition of fragility, in the embracing of change, that we find the path forward. We work towards our dreams and we overcome our fears. The next generation customer, leader, farmer will be different. We live in the age of flow, of screens, of artificial intelligence. In 2020, for the first time in the world's history, there will be more people over 65 than under 5. In Japan, the Australian dairy industry's biggest export market, 4 out of 10 people will be over 65. Global population is more often now spoken about in terms of 10 billion people by 2050. Our customer in the very near future, no matter where they are in the world, will have enormous access to information. They will more than likely also have no privacy, but they will live in a world where almost everything is cognitive. Cognitive clothes that tell you when they need to be washed, your health being permanently monitored, food and diet tailored to meet the needs of individuals and ordered automatically through whatever delivery system best suits. Farming will change. Ag tech investment in the US moved from 400 million in 2010 to 4.6 billion in 2015. Monsanto recently paid $1 billion for the Climate Corporation. Even that name's a bit scary, but a US entity that has 2.5 million locations and forecasts and processes this data along with 150 billion soil observations to generate 10 trillion weather simulation data points. In other words, not only can they predict the exact right time to plant, they can provide an insurance policy based on the data. Farmers will become managers of data and technology. Their markets and customers may change. Blockchain may see them deal directly with a customer anywhere in the world. Like Airbnb and Uber, farmers may no longer own equipment but subscribe to it for the required purpose. It will of course be driverless and cognitive. We will see farming change. Input technologies in fertiliser, seed, feed, big data fuelled by sensors, controlled environments, asset and input sharing will not only change farming, it will potentially change the culture of farming. Indeed, at its extreme, and it has already been done, milk and meat could be produced artificially, no cow required. In this world of change, I believe one thing will become stronger. Transparency and information will mean people will know more about who they deal with. They will be even more interested in issues such as values, ethics, history, who you are, where you came from, your contribution to society and the world. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a struggle going on out there. A struggle between those that want to create fear of change and those who embrace it. Those that have open hearts and reach out to help others, and those that think that closure and protection is the answer. A struggle between short-term thinking and long-term strategy. A struggle between those who seek to blame and those that seek to understand. We're all part of that struggle. Our actions will influence the society and the communities we become. We must be open. We must always think about and protect our values in business, in government, in our communities. Each time we choose not to help, each time we let a small thing go, choose not to invest for the future, choose to not consider an alternative view, choose to ignore the need for change, choose to ignore the plight of others wherever they may be in the world, we are taking a step in the wrong direction. The world I live in today includes knowing the profound challenges that autism brings every day to children and families. Knowing that I have hundreds of families on the Giant Steps waiting lists that are hoping we can just find a way to expand a little faster. The world that I live in today observes that it is a little dry in northern Victoria at the moment, and Bega Cheese dairy farmers in this region will be worried and need us to perform well. The world I live in today knows that our customers have many options and their world and markets are changing. They are loyal but need Bega Cheese to respond to their needs in the market. The world I live in is a world where people and community is everything. As a leader, I should always believe in the power of ideas. I should believe in the value of eternal discovery. I should always try and help and believe that others will do the same. I should encourage people to dream and give them time to do so. I should always be trying to build, trying to make a difference. I know I will be successful because of the teams I am able to build, because of the communities I am part of, because of the wisdom and advice of many. The more we behave in the interests of others, the more successful we will ultimately be. It is my view that it is the long game. It is strategy over tactics. It is staying connected, understanding the circumstances of others and having empathy and understanding that creates success. While a lot might change, it is my experience and my belief that these values will always be within us and will ultimately always be the key to the success in life and business. The role of organisations such as Bega Cheese and Giant Steps goes beyond the people we touch every day in the towns and cities we operate in. Our role in our behaviour and in our success is to try and build a model and set an example for others to follow. Both Bega Cheese and Giant Steps were created from very challenging and some would say almost impossible circumstances. As we look at both organisations today, we observe that they each make a huge difference in the lives of people in the communities they operate in. We know they are an example of resilience, of embracing change, of being open to new ideas. I do dream of each organisation growing more, making a bigger difference. The dairy industry is going through challenges at the moment. I do dream that from those challenges, perhaps it could be Bega Cheese that creates something better for dairy farmers, for staff, for customers, for shareholders, for the communities that rely on dairy. Perhaps a coming together of dairy companies to create an even larger publicly listed Australian-owned food company that can stand beside the best in the world while standing beside its communities is something worth dreaming of. Giant Steps, a place where children and young adults with autism are understood, given opportunity, supported, loved and cared for. A place recognised as amongst the best in the world, is always worth growing, expanding, moving to more cities and towns. Ladies and gentlemen, in my mind, corporate social responsibility has to be in all that you do. Solutions for each community may be different. The path will be one that requires resilience and change. Not all ideas will be successful. Sharing your dreams and fears will begin a conversation. Respecting the wisdom of the collective while empowering individuals to challenge what the future holds is what we must always have on our mind. In life and in business, it is my experience that taking that responsibility and supporting others who are prepared to is not only a corporate responsibility, it is a responsibility of all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry, especially and most of all for sharing your dreams and fears with us. We'll now have some questions. There are 2 roving microphones in the room. I'll direct them to you. If you'd like to raise your hand, let me know that you have a question. Please give your name and ensure that you are asking a question. A reminder that today's proceedings are being recorded. Anyone?
Philip Bunn from Beechworth. Thank you very much, Barry. My question is, have you an explanation as to why your two competitors are going in one direction and Bega Cheese seems to be going in the exact opposite direction?
What did you say about it being recorded? I find it difficult to criticise. I think from my perspective, I can explain where Bega Cheese comes from in terms of, I think our evolution has been one that's been particularly built on the things that I described earlier. I think one of the comments that I made in my speech was that the risk in change is the risk of losing your way and losing your values and losing the empathy for what's important. I would say that in my business life, and as we've got bigger, so Bega Cheese is now a $1.5 billion company, you tend to get surrounded by lots of advisors, lots of people that telling you lots of things, and you hire more and more talented, or not more and more talented, I shouldn't say that, but executives that tend to come from a more narrow band, funny enough, not as wide a band, because they've been professional executives their entire life, if you like. For me, I think my great benefit is that when all that noise is going on and I'm getting all the expert advice, I have enough knowledge and enough experience to say, look, that's all very interesting. No, we're not doing that. I won't say who, I'll just say somebody from our finance department rang me up within minutes of that announcement around price drops and said, right, you know how hard it is for us to try and hit budget. We need to drop our price. Everybody's doing it. It's now being all seen. And my answer was a very quick, haven't you got anything to do? Go and find something. And so I think, and so I'm careful not to criticise, but what I would say is, I do believe the decision was wrong, of course, as I've said, but what I would say is that I think if you fill a room with experts and those that are protecting your values don't perhaps have the experience or the knowledge to try and push back against that, that's when you lose your way. And I think that there would be an argument there that there are some examples of that happening.
Barry, Rick Thwaites from Beechworth. I greatly appreciate your commentary today, particularly on corporate social responsibility, which I find a great challenge across our society when I guess we expect it to be adopted by every corporation, every company. Given what you've said, that corporate social responsibility is who you are and what you are, should we be expecting it of every company when so many companies are not driven by, visioned by people like you who have a very different approach to what their business should be and how they should run? Thank you.
So no, I think that's a very good question because I suppose that was the point of what I was trying to make, and even it goes a bit to my previous answer. We have become a very homogeneous society where, I actually quite often in other forums talk about exchange and how exchange is what, and I'll put this in the wrong way, the importance of ideas having sex. We all know the sort of Darwinism theory that if the progeny will be stronger, the progeny will be better, and that means bringing in lots of different experiences. The more we hire from these direct channels, and the less we have diversity, if you like, and diversity, of course, goes beyond male and female, the more we run the risk that people just don't see it. They do live in an enclosed world and are actually able to do so. Look, let me not be too sort of simplistic, but if you're a young guy or girl that grows and I'll blame myself, lives in the lower North Shore of Sydney in Lane Cove, and you go to a private school, and then you go to Sydney University, and then you join the graduate program of a bank, and you you go on and be successful. The challenge that you've got is you can read about it and think about it, but have you ever really felt it? So how much is it part of you? And I think that's the, you know, and that is certainly no criticism of the next generation. I think they're more concerned about it than we were. But how you get that diversity of experience is extraordinarily important, and therefore I think your question is a good one. That it is not necessarily so that it will be the first thing that a corporation or a business thinks about, and therefore it is probably the thing that we as a community need to talk to them about more. Because I don't think the value is necessarily seen in it either.
Desiree Harker, thank you very much for your very insightful and heartfelt oration, Barry. It was excellent. I've had a lot to do with significant change in very big, heavy industries in coal and mining and all sorts of things like that. And headed up the HR function. So the thing for me that I'm really interested in is when you're dealing with staff and with managers, and we all know that the things that we have to do, I'm interested to know, and you've got to bring them along with you obviously, but what adjustments were made at the management and staff levels at a time the dairy industry was so fragile, as you say, and how were their fears allayed by you and your board?
So it's been interesting for us. I mean, right through all that period of time, and ironically enough, even now, Bega Cheese has continued to grow. So we have had to ask a lot of our people, but we haven't been in the position where we've had to ask, you know, for major layoffs or anything like that. And we've been, I guess, agile enough to stay ahead of the curve, and I sometimes say avoid the landmines. Now I don't want to pretend that you know, the leadership or our strategy has got some sort of genius involved. There is always sometimes a little bit of good fortune in business as well. But I think the adjustment we've had to make is, of course we have to let people go from time to time, either because they're not a fit or because the opportunity just isn't there for them. But we're generally trying to do it in the manner that I described, and we're generally the thing that, and I'll be really careful with this, I would love to say we always get it right. What I would say is that we try and get it right. And the thing that I would say is that I think if people do believe in what you're doing, if they do see the leadership in the business with the staff, understanding their circumstances, you know, if I was to maybe step slightly away from your question, if I think about 2008 and the global financial crisis, we did indeed have to reduce our price to farmers. I went out and was amongst them as much as I could be. I went out and was explaining it to them. Our farmers remained extraordinarily supportive. They knew what had happened, and they knew I understood. So I think, you know, my biggest thing with our leaders is that I don't want them in the offices. I want them on the ground amongst our people, and you can then manage the change that way. And it won't always be perfect and it won't always be smooth, but making sure, and to a certain extent I don't subscribe to the you need to churn your leadership every 3 years or every 5 years and bring. I actually love my 40-year people, you know, because they've changed right the way through, you know, and they've been with us and they understand, and they're your greatest communicators.
Hi, I'm Jenny O'Connor. I'm the Mayor at the moment of Indigo Shire. As you are well aware, we have this issue right now in our Shire with Murray Goulburn and the closure of the Kiwa Tangambalenga plant, 135 people losing their jobs. There was a cut in the price to the farmers, which they then reversed. What do we do as a community? What do I do in a role of leadership when corporate responsibility is not being carried out and we're seeing terrible impacts on our people? And when we as a community are watching this, is there something, I mean, I guess I'm asking your advice, and I know I'm putting you in an awkward situation here, but genuinely, what can we do when we see the impact and we're almost helpless, really, in this situation. Thanks.
So there are, of course, a variety of opinions and solutions that could be put forward. I think, so I think for me, the thing that's interesting about the decision is not only the fact that businesses will decide to sell assets, or they'll decide to indeed close assets. So for me, if that asset is no longer important to that company, that's as you say, you're a little bit powerless around what decision needs to be made there. The thing that's interesting is that not making it available for somebody else to do something with is, I think, where the challenge really is. I mean, it would not surprise you that I look at the Kiwa Valley and sort of run comparisons in my mind to the Bega Valley, and look at what we've done out of again, I said it earlier, a small community in fundamentally the middle of nowhere, like that, was able to do something unique and special. So to me, I don't think it's about trying to tell somebody else how to run their business, but I do think it is about saying, well, do we see those assets as a burden or a resource? And if we can see them as a resource, what could possibly be done with them rather than just abandon them would be the I guess the challenge that that if I was in your shoes, I would be putting to others, because to me, I think all communities will change, and an industry that was once the dominant industry may fade and something else will come through, and it's why that it is actually important to make sure that you've got sort of resilience models, if you like, where people are investigating and thinking about new options and new approaches, which, and I think Beechworth's probably a great example of that, really. But I think that would be the challenge that I would be putting to the owners. It's not me. Yeah.
Peter Leppert, resident of Beechworth. First of all, Barry, thank you for your beautiful insights into the power of communities and the power of people working together for a common good, which unfortunately it would appear that due to the apathy towards politics in this country, we now would rather just be comfortable and look after ourselves more than being in community. And this is part of the reason why rural communities, in my opinion, work better, because a town like Beechworth is a people-sized community where there's enough networks and cross-fertilisation across all the different groups that we're all connected through friendships or through 1 or 2 degrees of separation, and we all have a stake in wanting to make the community a better place. The other thing I wanted to say before I asked the question was, this is an ageing community where a lot of us are retired, either working class or people with professional backgrounds, who now have time to really think hard and look at the way the world is going forward. And we can sit back and read and analyse and understand about economic rationalisation and whether or not it works. And some of us are victims of that, having been made redundant from jobs. But what you've hit on with Bega and with your autism organisation is the inclusiveness of people who are all working for a common good. And a people-sized community, a corporate responsibility that says everybody in our company has ownership. And if we're looking at what Jenny said a minute ago, if Murray Goulburn was prepared to say, we'll allow all of the employees in Murray Goulburn at Tangam to buy into this business and have ownership of it so that they feel valued and part of that, I think this is how we can recreate a better future. So I guess my question is, how do we re-engage Australian communities to actually embrace working together, both in a political sense, in a food sovereignty sense, where we can say we reclaim the ownership of our food resources so that we can grow good, healthy food? I guess you've explained some of this, but what are the sort of key points we can take out of that in terms of your experience? Does that make sense to you, Barry?
So I'd maybe use the parallel I talked about earlier, and it's interesting. So it is not quite as sad, if you like, as we might sometimes feel. I'll make a little bit of a comment on politics with all of you that with the full knowledge that Kathy's sitting here, so I'll be careful. But the thing that was interesting for me, and the thing that I'm sort of getting from my institutional investors, so when I'm talking about institutional investors, I'm talking about people that are managing $50, $100 billion funds. So when we went to that market, when we went and said, look, we want to raise 120 from institutions and another 40 from our 8,000 shareholders, and they tried to give me 500 or 600 million and were furious with me that I wouldn't take it, which was, as I said, a little strange. All of them are talking to me about the fact that they want to invest in companies that are investing in ag and investing in food, and they love the idea of an Australian machine that might be going to try and do it. So there is, at all steps of Australian sort of business life at the moment, I think people are thinking about exactly that and are trying to do it. And I suppose at least that's the starting point, because I think what we've had is a bit of apathy up till now, and I will say to my team sometimes, you know, I am a little silly enough to watch the ad saying, you know, 7 people gathered in Broken Hill one day and created BHP, and I keep saying to them, well, why isn't that us? I keep saying to our teams, why is that not us? And I think one of the mistakes, it's not a mistake, I think it's an interesting cultural thing. I look at big global dairy companies and I go and I read their history and I discover that some of them were the same size as Bega once. So I go, well, why do we think that the international dairy players that come here and buy everything are better than us? Why do we think it can't be us doing that? They did it. And that's why I go, I think that we have become a little bit too risk averse, because the reason why we don't is because we fear being wrong. We fear risk, and I don't fear risk. So I think in terms of how I think it is changing. So to give a positive answer, I think there is a view that's changing. It's notable exactly how much people want to really invest in agriculture, which will help small communities, which will provide other opportunities as well. I think the problem, and I know this doesn't apply to Kathy, I think the problem in agriculture, in politics, is a little the same as what I described in large corporates that get their people from a homogeneous pipeline. So if the Labor Party gets them all from unions and the Liberal Party gets them all from university, and then going straight into a political advisor's role and never ever actually running down the road in bare feet, for the want of a better way of putting it, that's why we've got a political problem. You know, ironically enough, we don't have diversity of experience.
Barry, Patton Bridge is my name, and thank you very much for your address. It was terrific. I'm really interested in your vision of the future of agriculture, and particularly the corporatisation of agriculture and the impact of technology and all of the implications of that. But the view that the question I'd like to ask you is actually more around the impact on younger people entering this system, and where the power will sit in the future, and how we go about creating a pathway for younger people to be able to get in these increasingly, as the farms get larger and more capital intensive, and basically the capital mountain that young people have to climb to be part of the system becomes higher. So how do we juggle that trend?
So I think agriculture is going to change in a number of ways. So you're right. Barriers to entry are going to get higher in those large corporate-style farms, if you like. And this might sound terrible, but so my son, who has 2 degrees, one in information systems and one in business with a major in marketing, and 3 children under 3, just left his corporate job to come back and run our farms. Now, the interesting thing about that is I had to give a speech somewhere else about the future of agriculture. So I said to him, mate, what will you be doing in 10 years? And he's gone, I'm not farming. And I've gone, oh, hang on, I thought you've just come back. And I know the mornings are cold. And he's gone, no, which is where I'll be managing data and lots of it. I'll be managing, and already what he's got in front of him in 3 months, the data he's gathered is astounding. So he's going to be a very different style of manager with a very different style of labour force, indeed probably a small labour force, and he is going to be one of those ones that doesn't have the barrier to entry associated with capital because he's come into that. Now, on the other hand, and I made a comment that I know is a really dangerous comment to make when I talked about artificial meat and artificial milk. So I think there will be different styles of agriculture and different channels to market. So there will be the role, there will be more than likely plant-based milk and plant-based meat. And that will service a particular market, remembering that our market is going to be 10 billion people. It won't service the high-end premium market. That will be serviced by potentially companies like our own, but nor will it service the really boutique markets. And when I mention blockchain, so I can see circumstances where the smaller properties, even the more biodiverse properties that you know, run chickens, run dairy, run beef, run a fully dynamic system, will have a market out there and will do it themselves through the blockchain technology that's now very much a part of what we do. I think we have, and this is particularly the case in Australia, had a predisposition to assume that those that own the land farm the land, and I think that will change. And you're seeing the emergence of REITs, real estate investment trusts, getting larger and larger, where they're not actually interested in running the farms, they're just interested in owning the real estate. And so I think you'll see multiple models, but in a way, I'm actually quite optimistic about what the opportunity might be for the next generation of farmers come through, but they will come through in a variety of forms, according to their particular circumstances, but also just according to the skill base that they may well have, which I think will be much broader than perhaps, you know, say mine is as a farmer today.
Hi, my name's Louise Ritchie. I have a very little small food business in town. I'd like to thank you for, it's made me quite teary, your oration today, so I apologise for that. But your vulnerability, your open-hearted, your softness of being able to take all your experiences through life and put them into a very corporatised global world is what I find quite incredible. My question to you is, how do you balance that sense of responsibility, using that soft-hearted approach in a world that is driven by profit and money?
So I have to be honest, I get terribly upset sometimes. I get terribly hurt, and that can be sometimes after I do a round of supplier meetings and my suppliers are just angry with me because the milk price isn't better than what it is, and when they're angry with me it upsets me no end. And of course I can't show it because what I need to show is strength and leadership, and I need to show empathy, but I don't need to show them that it's bothering me. So I do crawl into a cocoon occasionally, would be the right way of putting it, but my cocoon's a little bit different. And I'd love to say it's better than this, but I have found the more responsibility I take and the more challenges that I need to deal with in any given day or week or month, the more I have to make sure I escape. And I actually have to do that through various elements of torture, would be the right way of putting it. So people that know me know that I will go and I'll put something, every year I'll put something in front of me that I think is impossible for me to do physically, and then go and do it. So I do it. So I'll trek ridiculous distances, or I'll climb really high mountains, or I'll get on my push bike and I'll ride very long ways. And it's not a quote of mine. It's a quote of somebody that I don't really admire, so don't want to give voice to. But there was a comment by Lance Armstrong once that he didn't ride for pleasure. He rode for pain. And what he meant by that is that there's a certain point in physical activity where your mind clears completely. And all you can do is got to turn the pedal over. Can't think of anything else. I've just got to turn this pedal over, or I've just got to climb this mountain, and your mind goes to only that. And what I found is that I have to actually do that so I can come back with a clear mind when I need to think about the big things I need to think about. But there is no pretending that, and my team know it, that taking this approach can be very emotionally draining, so you need to just find self-management techniques to do that. I should say that, and probably as evidenced by the length of my answers to questions, that I love my little boy Matty, who's now 25. And Matty can't speak, is still, Giant Steps has done wonderful things with him, but he's still quite agitated a lot of the time. He does, because I travel a lot for work, he identifies his mother as care and me as entertainment. And so when I arrive home, doesn't matter what time it is, unless I can sneak in very quietly, Matty is straight down carrying his shoes. And it's a great achievement, if you remember in the speech, so he used to fear leaving the house. Now he goes, "You're here, shoes mean we're going." So he gives me his shoes and goes, "We're going." And to take a little longer to answer, I normally go, "Matty, Dad's tired, Dad's going to sit down for a minute." So Matty's always really good. He just runs away and gets another pair of shoes because he thinks I didn't understand. And he'll normally bring me all his shoes and all his socks until I give up, which doesn't take very long. I go, "Right, Matty, we're going." And I walk great long distances with Matty because Matty loves to walk great long distances, and we do that together. And the funny thing is, as I walk with him, I'll quite often share my business problems. And I'll chat to him about whatever it might be, whether it's Giant Steps or, you know, I'm having trouble with this manager at the particular site, or you know, or my board, or the next fundraising thing I might want to do. And the thing I love most about Matty, he's normally sort of running around me, he's in front of me or behind me or somewhere, and he's, you know, and there always comes a point where he'll come up to me and go, and you all know what that means. Just shut up. So he does give me great balance in life, you know. So.
I think we have to leave it there. I'm sorry. Stay with me, Barry. Thank you. We now come to the Kerferd Medal presentation. George Briscoe Kerferd is held up in our community as an ideal of an engaged, effective community leader. The Kerferd Medal is presented to orators who have shared with us these same values. George and his wife Anne had 10 children. Present with us today are great-grandsons Ray and Robert Kirkwood and their partners Beth and Sue. Representing the Kerferd family, I invite Ray to thank Barry for his oration and to present him with the George Briscoe Kerferd Medal. Please welcome Ray Kirkwood.
Under there. Right, thank you.
On behalf of you and the descendants of George Briscoe Kerferd, I'd like to thank you, Barry, for a wonderful speech on all movement is risk. Barry, Irvin has had a stellar career. And am I right in saying that it started in the Bank of New South Wales? As a teller?
Yes.
Yes? Before seeing the error of his ways. In his father's eyes. And he returned to the family farm. Barry, fathers are always right. Because at 27 he was appointed to the board of Bega Cooperative and became its chairman in 2000. And he brought home Vegemite. The rest you know. George Briscoe Kerferd also had a rapid rise before being sent by his father to start a merchant business in Melbourne. But he was drawn to the goldfields of Bendigo. He, as far as I know, didn't have the benefit of his father's advice, as Barry did, to tell him the error of his ways. It took George a little time before he moved to Beechworth and established something that would go very well with Barry's Bega Cheese, a wine and beer brewing company. Here in Beechworth, he also laid the foundation for his political and legal careers, which are probably well known by this audience. In reading about both careers of both men, it struck me how often each were described as having a great degree of common sense. A commodity, if you could bottle it, in George's case, or pasteurise it, in Barry's, would make you a fortune. Both are seen as skillful negotiators. Both could and can see the bigger picture and work diligently to achieve the outcome. Both men have and had a highly developed sense of community and its well-being. Barry, with his extraordinary work with Giant Steps, is matched by George with his development of Beechworth's water supply, hospital and asylum. Both have a great sense of enjoyment of life. If all this seems too perfect, and I hope Barry doesn't mind me telling this little story, about the time he invited the joint managing directors of Giant Steps, Claire and Kerry, to his farm for a strategy day. Know what's coming?
No, probably.
A farm worker called and asked for his help to get a wild bull into a truck. Barry asked the women to get into the ute and went down to help, saying to them he would show them how to handle a wild bull. On arriving, Barry jumped straight into the pen with a small stick. But the bull, which had been bouncing off metal fences, wanted nothing of him and charged him. Barry turned and went to the fence, but not before the bull butted him into the air and over the fence. His startled female guest feared for his life. But then the bull also jumped the fence. And the women feared for theirs. And they sprinted to the ute, jumped inside and locked themselves in, leaving Barry to fend for himself. Fortunately,
it hasn't worked completely.
Fortunately for Barry, the bull was presented with his freedom and ran off. And with that, I'd like to present Barry, not with a bull, but with a medal for the Kerferd Oration, and he joins an illustrious group. And it was a wonderful speech, and you've joined it with great deal of expertise. And here is the medallion. That was a wonderful. And now, I think I'll hand back to our MC. And I'll give you that so you can put it in.
We'd like to say thank you to Ray and Robert Kirkwood for being here today, and also to other descendants of George Briscoe Kerferd who have wanted and not been able to attend this year. The Kerferd name will continue to live on in us and inspire good citizenship. Today we've added the name of Barry Irvin, Member of the Order of Australia, to the honour board at my left, which shows the Kerferd Oration's eminent speakers since 2003. A few concluding remarks after today. On behalf of the community, I would like to thank all of the people involved in the creation of this year's oration. They are listed in your programs, but we'd like to call to the stage Karen Thistleton to give a special address.
Good afternoon, everyone. I won't keep you very long. I just wanted to quickly note that Ian McKinlay, who has been the chairman of the Kerferd Oration Committee, is stepping down following this oration after 2 years as chair. It's been a privilege to work with Ian for the last couple of years, certainly since I moved to Beechworth. And I just, on behalf of the committee and everyone here present, wanted to thank Ian for his wonderful stewardship and his guidance and his support in arranging the oration for the past couple of years. So thank you, Ian.
It would be remiss not to thank our financial sponsors who've got us here today. A very special thank you to La Trobe University, WAW Credit Union, Indigo Shire Council, and Into Our Hands Foundation. Thank you. The Kerferd Oration Committee is delighted to announce that the Indigo Shire Council and WAW have agreed to continue their financial sponsorship of the oration for the next 4 years. We thank too the George Kerferd Hotel, who so generously support the Kerferd Oration and have provided today's lunch. The Kerferd Oration Committee is interested in your thoughts about the oration. They ask you to please write your comments on the feedback cards that are included with your programs today and place those cards in the marked box on your way out. Today's conversation doesn't stop at the door. The Orations Committee is planning further activities within our community to explore the themes Barry has brought to us today. Information will be online and in local media. Please watch this space. In conclusion, I have the great pleasure of inviting you all to join us at lunch. Please join with us in celebrating the 15th George Briscoe Kerferd Oration. Thank you. Lunch will be served at the rear of the room. Can I ask that we all join together to pack up some of those tables, chairs, so we have a bit of room to move and talk? Thanks.